Gentlemen, and welcome back into another edition of Key Time Sports. Please like, comment, share, subscribe to Key Time Sports on YouTube and Key City Sports on Instagram. Today, oh my goodness, this is the perfect time. This is the perfect season. Football season is right around the corner. What I am going to do today is my yearly series, NFL teams with plenty to prove for the 2025 NFL season. The first team on the list is none other than that team from South Florida, the Miami Dolphins. Now, first, before I get into the team rosters and their schedule, reportedly, Mike McDaniel is on the hot seat. So, one thing I can say is over the last 3 years, he has had top offenses when Tua Tagovailoa is in the starting lineup. But it seems like when Tua Tagovailoa gets injured, the offense decreases, and we've seen it. We saw it last year when Tua was out for the rest of the season. He came back a couple games, looked great, but it was too little, too late. So now, when we look at Mike McDaniel's tenure in Miami, we see a lot of highs, but he doesn't emphasize defense. And it seems like every time they get into the playoffs, they play in a cold weather climate and then they go on to lose. But a couple of weeks ago, well, I would say about three weeks ago, I seen Travis, excuse me, not Travis, but Tyreek Hill at the Sports Fanatics Fest, and he said that he wants to give the Miami Dolphin fans a playoff win. It would be their first playoff win in 25 years. But one thing that he has to notice is it's okay to set out those goals, but you're gonna have bumps along the road. We already know that it's not peaches and cream, apples and oranges, rainbows and sunshine during an NFL season. You have 17 weeks. It's a grueling 17 game season. And also, you are going to have injuries along the way. So what do I always say, America? I always say that after the first the first 6 games, you know what type of team you have. After the first 6 games last season, we knew that the Miami Dolphins was going to be a average team or a below average team. They ended up being a below average team. So now let me get into the team roster, well, the projected roster for the 2025 NFL season. Now, the Miami Dolphins, we already know that they have Tua Tagovailoa. Here is most of their offense. I'm gonna let everybody get a good 15-second look at their top half of the offense. And here is their bottom half of the offense. And here is their third team as far as offense. Now we get to the defensive side of things. Now, the Miami defense, last 3 years, ever since Mike McDaniel has been a part of the helm, has underperformed. Now, I was reading off a stat last night before I started the show this morning. The last 3 years, the Miami Dolphins defense has been 24th, 19th, and 22nd. So the middle of the pack. So they are not the type of defense that stops offenses in their tracks. They've never been that. They focus on offense more than they focus on defense. But this year, I believe if the Miami Dolphins don't win a playoff game, I believe Mike McDaniel is out of there. Now, I don't like to call for nobody's job, America. Y'all know me. Y'all have been watching me for almost over 2 years now. I don't like to call for nobody's job. But when the owners and when everybody in the organization starts hearing, when I start hearing grumblings about, is this guy the right person to lead my franchise or lead this group of guys? You already know that the coach is on the hot seat. You already know that. So here is the Miami Dolphins defense, top half of their defense. Here is the second part of their defense. I'm gonna give everybody a 15-second look. And here is the last half of their defense. Here's their special teams and a player that is already on injured reserve. Now let me shift on over to the schedule. Now for everybody, I have the AFC East record prediction in my dashboard. So when I look at the schedule for the Miami Dolphins this upcoming season, I see an average team. That's what I see, because I can already tell you that outside of maybe week one, I could see the Miami Dolphins winning against Indianapolis in week one. But when you have teams on your schedule like Buffalo, the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm gonna get to them later on in the show. You have Atlanta, that could be a dark horse team. You have Baltimore, then Buffalo again, Washington. Oh my goodness. The Dolphins, they have a tough schedule. And I do mean a tough schedule between week 15 and week 17. You have a potential of three playoff teams when we get to that point. You have Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay. All of that is going to be tough. But the main question is for the Miami Dolphins: can Tua Tagovailoa stay healthy for an entire season? 2023, he missed 4 games. Last season, he missed 6 games. 2022, he missed 7 games. So he's always been injury prone. With what the last 3 years has shown us, he will always be out for a couple games. But I'm wishing that I always go into every game and to every season when I do cover the NFL. I hope that players don't have life-threatening or career-threatening injuries. Now that's what I'm hoping for. Now, Tua Tagovailoa, he's had some scary moments when it comes to injuries. But I believe that this season he is gonna have to he is gonna have to bring it. Put all the chips on the table. If I'm the Miami Dolphins players, I'm going into this season thinking that this is the last season that Mike McDaniel will be on our coaching staff. But one thing I can say is, now the Miami Dolphins, they have a tough, and I do mean a tough road if they're trying to get to the playoffs and even go deep into the playoffs, because you got Baltimore, you got let's see, you got Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh might be a dark horse. Then you have the almighty Kansas City Chiefs. We already know what the Kansas City Chiefs can do. You have Cincinnati out there. We know the potential of the Cincinnati Bengals, but last year they had a kind of a down year, but we are expecting them to be more at the top of their game. So my final take for the Miami Dolphins is, I believe that they are either going to be 9-8 or 11-6 and win a playoff game, but lose in the second round of the playoffs. And I don't know what's going to happen after the end of the season, if Mike McDaniel is going to stay or if he is going to go, but that is a realistic thing for us to talk about. And as far as the record concerned for the Miami Dolphins, that is being very realistic. So that's all I have to say for the Miami Dolphins. The second team I want to cover is the Indianapolis Colts. The main question for the Indianapolis Colts going into 2025 is, Can Anthony Richardson stay healthy? Now, last couple of years, he's been on the same trajectory as Tua Tagovailoa. What I just mentioned, he was out. He was injured. He was injured last season for 6 games. Went out of a game because he was tired, so that didn't look good for him. And also, as far as his completion percentage and quarterback rating throughout the levels of his football career hasn't been good. In college, he was 53% completion percentage. In high school, he was 49% of completion percentage. That is not going to look well. And in a day and in a era where passing is the dominant effect when it comes to a football team, he is pretty much holding this team back. I'm gonna just go ahead and say it. He is holding this team back, America. He is. Now, what the Colts they brought in Daniel Jones. They also have Riley Leonard at the well, he's the backup quarterback, and he will be the third string quarterback. But if Anthony Richardson doesn't have a good season, I wouldn't be surprised if the Colts go in a different direction. Possibly trade Anthony Richardson, or pretty much put him, bench him rather. Bench him. That's what I mean. And start either Daniel Jones or Riley Leonard. But there is one thing about the Colts. The last couple of years, they have been in the playoff conversation late in the season, and then all of a sudden, come Thanksgiving or Christmas, they're out of it. Now, Shane Steichen, hey, that's another coach. Shane Steichen, he has did the bare minimum with what he has had. Now, the wide receiver core for the Indianapolis Colts is pretty good. You got Josh Downs, Anthony Golden, DJ Montgomery, and you also have Alec Pierce. So this team, it should be, I would say, middle of the pack, maybe 14, 15 when it comes to offense. But the offense should not be pedestrian like it was last year. It shouldn't be. Now, this is the offense for the Indianapolis Colts. The third part of the offense. And also, here is the third part of the offense. Here is the Indianapolis Colts defense, the first part of their defense. And here is the second part of their defense. And the third part of their defense. Also, special teams. Now, everybody who is watching, I am going to reiterate, this is the projected opening day roster. Preseason hasn't started yet, but this is the projected opening day roster. Now, the Indianapolis Colts schedule. I was looking at their schedule last night, and when we see their schedule, we know that they have a lot of tough games going into 2025. Miami, they play Miami first. First game, I believe that the Indianapolis Colts take a loss first game of the season. Then you have Denver. Possibly they could start off the season 0-2. Then Tennessee, you have Los Angeles Rams. That could be another loss. Then you have Kansas City, which will most definitely be a loss. Then you have Then you have San Francisco, and you also have Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Now, it's always hard to go into Pittsburgh and beat Pittsburgh at home. But what I see from this schedule is I see a team that's pretty much going to do the bare minimum, maybe have 9 to 10 wins. I don't see much more than that because I could see the Chargers winning. I could see the Chargers winning that game over the Indianapolis Colts. So I placed the Indianapolis Colts record in my dashboard. I believe that it is 9-8 or 10-7. I'm not totally sure, but after the show, you can go in my dashboard and you can look at all of the divisional predictions for the NFL season because I did that yesterday. But as far as the Colts, I could see them going 9-8 or 10-7 and pretty much missing the playoffs again. If they get to the playoffs, they will be knocked out in the first round because the Colts, they are not as strong as some of these other teams could possibly be. And also, you still have the Chiefs to worry about in the AFC. You do. You still have the Chiefs to worry about. So the next team I am going to cover. Next team I'm going to cover is the Los Angeles Chargers, and we all know that they are led by Justin Herbert. So we all know that the LA Chargers pretty much they did what they were supposed to do last season, give their fan base hope. Now let's see, can the Chargers take that step in year two? Now, we go throughout history, Jim Harbaugh led teams have been able to take that next step in year two. We saw it with the Michigan Wolverines. We saw it with the 49ers. We saw it with the Stanford Cardinal. So we have seen a resume and a history of where Jim Harbaugh can take his team from an average playoff team to basically almost going to the championship game. Now, he did that with the 49ers. He did that in college with the Stanford Cardinal. With the Michigan Wolverines, he had quite a few bumps in the road, but was able to get a championship while at with his time at Michigan. Now, let me look to the roster. The roster for the Chargers, here's their offense. I'm going to give everybody a 15-second look. Here's their offense. Here is the second part of their offense. Here's the third part of their offense. And here is their defense. Now, the defense last year, at the start of the regular season, they were good. The first 3 or 4 games, they were one of the best defenses in the NFL. But towards the tail end of the season, they pretty much lacked the talent that they had early in the season because of injuries and I'm going to say underperforming defensive um, series. Yeah. So now we see the point where the San Diego Chargers, well, excuse me, not San Diego Chargers, but the LA Chargers have a team where they could pretty much make some noise in the AFC West. Now, can they win the AFC West? You still have the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, he has something to say about that. So I'm not going to say that the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to win the AFC West, but I did see something where someone was working at CBS Sports Network and he said, I'm not totally sure who the guy is, but he is an analyst that has been working for CBS for quite some time. He said that the Kansas City Chiefs would not win the AFC West. The last 10 years, the Kansas City Chiefs have been winning the AFC West by default. Now I'm gonna tell y'all like this. When it comes to the Kansas City Chiefs, we already know that the Kansas City Chiefs are dominant in their division. Chargers, they are second. Denver, they are third. The Raiders, they are fourth. Could this entire bracket be able to make it to the playoffs? I don't think so because You still got the Chiefs to worry about. But that is a question that I would like to leave the entire audience with. So here's the first part of the Chargers defense. Here's the second part of the Chargers defense. And here is the third part. Here are their special teams led by Coach Jim Harbaugh. Now, let's look at the schedule. Chargers, they have a tough schedule starting out in Brazil with the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe that they are going to lose this game. Las Vegas, I believe that they might lose that game and pretty much start off the season 0-2. Now against Washington, they might have a tough time against Washington. Minnesota, they always have a tough time against Minnesota. Pittsburgh having a tough time. Philadelphia, loss. Kansas City, you play Kansas City twice, loss. Dallas, you play Dallas later on in the season. That could potentially be a loss. And to finish out the season, they play Denver in Denver, Colorado, in the Mile High City. That could be a potential loss. So I got the Los Angeles Chargers going 10-7 or 11-6, but I cannot go against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the AFC West by default. They are, because Denver, I could see Denver, being an underdog in some of those games that they should be favored. The Raiders, we already know what Pete Carroll said just the other day. He said that he wins 10 games a year for the past 20 years. So we are going to see, can the Raiders win 10 games? And later on in the show, I'm going to get to the Raiders' schedule. But that's all I have for the Los Angeles Chargers. The next team I'm going to cover is the Monsters of the Midway, the team that is known as the Chicago Bears, or famously known as the Bears. So now, the Chicago Bears, led by Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and you also have here is their offense. Here is their offense for the 2025 season, and also here's their second part of their offense. Here's their third part. Gonna give everybody a good 15 seconds to pretty much look at everybody's name. And here is the Chicago Bears defense for the 2025 season. But this is the projected opening day roster. Preseason hasn't started yet. They are just getting started for training camp. So this is the projected roster. So here is the first part of the Chicago Bears defense. Here's the second part of the Chicago Bears defense. I'm going to give everybody a good 10 to 15 seconds to look at everybody's name. And here is the third part of the Chicago Bears defense and special teams. Now, when we look at the Chicago Bears schedule, it is tough right out of the gate. You have Minnesota, you have Detroit, and you also have Dallas in the first 3 weeks. Now, the Chicago Bears could pretty much be looking at 0-3 before the end of September. But one thing I can say, it's not about the first 4 weeks of the Bears schedule. It's about the last half of their schedule, because you have Washington, you have Baltimore, Cincinnati, Minnesota, you have Green Bay on the road, you have Philadelphia on the road, and you have San Francisco on the road. That is going to be a tough outing for any team, but especially for the Chicago Bears. Now, Ben Johnson is an offensive guru. Let's see what Ben Johnson can do in his first season. Now, where do I have the Chicago Bears finishing the season? 8 or 9 wins. That's all. Because with this schedule, I could see the teams that I just rattled off, I could see them losing to most of those teams. So I got the Chicago Bears going 8-9 or 9-8 and missing the playoffs. Now the next team I'm going to cover is the almighty New York Jets, led by Justin Fields. Now, week one, well, first off, I'm going to give you the projected offense for the New York Jets, led by Justin Fields. Here's the first part of their offense. Here's the second part of their offense. Gonna give everybody a good 5 to 10 seconds to look at everybody's name. Here's the third part of their offense. And here is the New York Jets defense. Here's the first part of their defense. Here's the second part of the New York Jets defense. Here's the third part of the New York Jets defense. And like I've been reiterating throughout the entirety of this show, this is the projected roster for the 2025 season for the New York Jets. Training camp just started this week. So we have some time. Obviously, this roster is going to change, but these are the projected players who will be on the roster for the New York Jets. Now, let me look at their schedule. Now, their schedule is difficult. I can say that. Pittsburgh, first game. Second game, Buffalo. Tampa Bay, the third game, and Miami, the fourth game. Now, worst case scenario, the Jets are 0-4. Best case scenario is they're 2-2 because Pittsburgh, it's going to be tough winning against Pittsburgh. Buffalo, we already know that Jets and the Bills are division rivals. Tampa, early in the season, I could see Tampa pulling this game out. When they play Miami, divisional matchup, we already know divisional matchups, they could go either way. Dallas, they play Dallas at home in New York. That could go either way. But when we get to the last half of the Jet schedule, and I'm looking at teams like Baltimore, and I'm looking at teams like, Buffalo to end the season, Cincinnati, Denver. We already know Denver is going to pose a threat to most of these teams. We already know that. So the New York Jets, I could see them going 10-7 or 9-8. Now, do they make the playoffs? That remains to be seen because we are going to have to see what the New York Jets can do on a week-to-week basis. The New York Jets, they have the longest drought in the 4 major North American sports. That is NBA, NFL, NHL, and MLB. They haven't been to the playoffs since 2010. And that is going on 15 years. And we already know 2010 to now, it's 2 different worlds. You have AI at your disposal. In 2010, we just had the iPhone 4G. In 2010. Now we have the iPhone 17 or 18 that is pretty much going to be going out before this year ends. So as far as the New York Jets, that's all I have for the New York Jets and their season. The next game I am going to cover, the next team I am going to cover is the Pittsburgh Steelers led by Aaron Rodgers. Now, look, I am a big Aaron Rodgers fan, but we already know that Aaron Rodgers is at the tail end of his career. He is. He's at the tail end of his career, and he is on the Steelers roster just for this season. You're pretty much looking at their future. Steelers fans are looking at their future in Will Howard. You can see they have Mason Rudolph and pretty much every other quarterback outside of Aaron Rodgers and Will Howard. They're pretty much average. They are. So here's the first half of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Gonna give everybody 5 to 10 seconds to look at everybody's name. Here's the second part of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Here's the third part of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And here's the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. TJ Watt, they got him under contract just before training camp started, and that was great. Pittsburgh Steelers, we know that they are one of the old-fashioned teams. They don't like to pay their players, but we all know that the Steelers were not going to let TJ Watt go away. They weren't going to let him walk away because he has been the cornerstone for that defense over the past 4 years. He has. Now, here's the first part of the Steelers defense. Here's the second part of the Steelers defense. Here's the third part of the Steelers defense. And here is the special teams. Now, these are the projected rosters that I am going over. For every team that I have been going over throughout this show has been the projected roster for the 2025 season. Now, training camp just started for all NFL teams. Now we have a good 30 to 35 days before we know the opening day rosters. So now let me get to the schedule for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is going to be a tough schedule. It's going to be a tough schedule because Pittsburgh Steelers, they start off the season in New York. Okay, so New York Jets, that game could go either way, but more than likely I'm going to lean towards the Pittsburgh Steelers. Second game against Seattle, that could go either way. They pretty much could start off 1-1 or 0-2. Then you have Minnesota, you have Cincinnati twice, you have Chicago, you have Buffalo, you have Baltimore twice, and that pretty much could be their season because some of these games that I'm looking at on the Steelers schedule could go either way. New England early in the season could go either way. Cleveland. Now, I don't expect much from Cleveland, but Cleveland, it was some of those games where Cleveland, they pretty much surprised people last year. Cleveland, they won versus the Baltimore Ravens, and they were heavy underdogs. Green Bay, Steelers could easily lose against Green Bay. The Chargers could easily lose against the Chargers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, I see this season as them doing the bare minimum again, 10-7, 9-8, getting to the playoffs. Now, as far as them winning in the playoffs, that is a whole nother story. And also, it remains to be seen because the Pittsburgh Steelers could fall flat on their face and we could potentially see the first losing season in Mike Tomlin's tenure. Now, everybody knows that I am a big fan of Mike Tomlin. I just do not see the Pittsburgh Steelers having a losing season this year because we all know that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense can keep the team in games that they do not even have to be in. Do you all know that last season the Pittsburgh Steelers, they won a game by kicking nothing but field goals, and that was over their arch rival, the Baltimore Ravens. See this? Pittsburgh Steelers, they kicked 6 field goals last season against the Baltimore Ravens and won the game. I don't think that they are going to be able to do that this season. And it was not just against the Baltimore Ravens that they did that to. They did that to the Atlanta Falcons and a third team. They also did that too on their schedule. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, they still have that old-fashioned mentality. They don't light up the scoreboard, but they keep the game close. And within the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, they pretty much can do anything. They pretty much can do anything. So that's all I have to say about the Pittsburgh Steelers 2025 schedule. Now I have 2 other teams that could be sleepers. These last 2 teams could be sleepers. We have the Las Vegas Raiders, and we also have the Carolina Panthers to finish out this show. It has been a good show. This has been a good show, everybody. It has been. So for the Las Vegas Raiders, they have a new coach in Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll said the other day for the last 20 years, he has won an average of 10 games a year. We all know that. But let's look at this roster. They have Geno Smith. Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, they know each other like the back of each other's hand. Once it comes to Ashton Jeanty, they have a bell cow running back. They also have Raheem Mostert on the roster. Now, this is the projected roster for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to give everybody a good 5 to 10 seconds to to look at everybody's name that could potentially be on the Las Vegas Raiders roster. This is the first part of the Las Vegas Raiders offense. This is the second part of the Las Vegas Raiders offense. This is the third part of the Raiders offense. And this is the first part of the Raiders defense. Now, Maxx Crosby, he got paid. He got paid, and I'm happy that the Raiders paid him because he has been through thick and thin. He said that he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, and I believe that the Raiders are a dark horse to make the playoffs. I really do. You have Pete Carroll, you have a good offensive coordinator, you have a quarterback, and that's what they had been lacking over the past couple of years. You also have a bell cow running back, and you have an above average defense led by Maxx Crosby. Now, here is the first part of the Raiders defense. Here is the second part of the Raiders defense. Here is the third part of the Raiders defense. And here is their special teams led by Pete Carroll. Now, I look at the Raiders' schedule, and I can see it is going to be tough. It is. Because Washington, they're at Washington. That could pretty much be a loss. Against the Chargers, that can pretty much be a loss. Now, New England, that first game of the season for the Raiders could go either way. Kansas City is on their schedule twice. That game, they could pretty much get swept by Kansas City. But do I think that is going to happen? I think that the Raiders are going to keep both games with Kansas City close, but in the end, we already know how Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, and the whole Kansas City Chiefs offensive line, we already know what they can do against the Raiders. So I'm not going to hold my breath. But when it comes to the when it comes to the Raiders going to the Los Angeles Chargers, playing the Los Angeles Chargers. I could see them losing that. They also play Denver in Denver on November 6th. They could lose that against the Jaguars. That game right there could go either way. We are going to see what type of team that the Raiders have come week 9. Well, we might even see that before, because I always say the first 4 to 6 games, you want to see what type of team you have. And then after that 6th game, you know what type of team you have. And then, see, this is why I always say I like when week 11, week 12 hits, because you see separation from the contenders and pretenders. That's why I always say November is the month where you separate yourself, whether you're going to go to the playoffs or you just going to have to pack it up and get ready for the following season. So as far as for the Raiders on their schedule, I could see them winning 9 to 10 games, but in my dashboard, I got the Raiders going 10-7 because Pete Carroll said the other day, over the last 20 years he's won an average of 10 games every season. We are going to hold Pete Carroll at his word. But the Las Vegas Raiders could be a dark horse for the playoffs, America. So watch out for the Raiders potentially being a playoff team in 2025. And the final, and I do mean the final team that I'm going to be talking about. Wow, we are almost at the end of this show already. We are in mid-season form already. But the last team I want to talk about is the Carolina Panthers. Last season, the Carolina Panthers came on strong. Bryce Young, I like what I saw from him in the last 6 games. He didn't turn the ball over much, and his touchdown to interception ratio was 2/1. So the Panthers. Now the Panthers, the ceiling for them this season is 7 wins, 7 to 8 wins. I'm not going to put them in the playoffs just yet. After this season, let's see what year 3 can bring of Bryce Young. But here is the offense for the Panthers, first part of their offense. I'm going to give everybody a good 10 to 15, a good 5 to 10 seconds. Here is their second part of the offense, Panthers' second part of their offense. Here is the third part of the Panthers' offense. And here is the first part of their defense. Here is the second part of the Panthers' defense. Here is the third part of the Panthers' defense. And to finish everything out, here is their special teams. Now, one thing about the Panthers, scheduling wise, they have a tough schedule. As far as right out the gate, they have 2 games that could go either way. They could win them, or their opponent could win them. They have Jaguars the first game in Jacksonville. The second game, they have Arizona. They have the Falcons the third game. And then when you look later on in their schedule, you see that they have Dallas. Now, potentially, I'm a Cowboys fan, but this is not a biased take from me. Potentially, the Cowboys, they could be a sleeper team for the playoffs too. But you also have on their schedule the Buffalo Bills, the San Francisco 49ers, the Los Angeles Rams, and you also have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice in the last 3 weeks of the season. So Carolina Panthers, the ceiling for them this season is 7 to 8 wins. But one thing I don't want them to do is take Bryce Young out of the lineup like they did last season. Because Bryce Young is the cornerstone for your future. You already said that. Dave Canales, the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, he believes in Bryce Young. I believe in Bryce Young. I want Bryce Young to succeed. I want the Panthers to succeed. I want everybody on this list that I just came up with to succeed. I want everybody, and I do mean everybody, that have playoff aspirations this year in 2025 to succeed and get to the playoffs. But there's only 7 teams in each conference that is able to get to the playoffs. So, last thing I want to say, my final take for the Panthers and for this video. This is the video of NFL teams that have plenty to prove for the 2025 NFL regular season. Let's see what all of these teams have in the fold for the 2025 NFL regular season. And with that, those are my predictions for all 8 teams that have plenty to prove for the 2025 NFL season. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell to get notified of all of my reaction videos, shows, and other content. Also, please, Key Time Sports on YouTube. Please like, share, subscribe. Please like, share, and subscribe on Key City Sports on Instagram. The NFL season is right around the corner. Next week, we have a game to talk about, and we are still doing an expansion here on Key Time Sports on YouTube and on my other show, Key City Sports on IG. So please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And remember, one last time, remember, the key is always on time. See you all next week.